Welcome to Dr. Mensch, the radio show that takes a real, compassionate look at mental health from A to Z. Join child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtshein each week as we explore topics that matter: autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, schizophrenia, behavioral challenges, neurodevelopmental disorders, and more. No stigma, no judgment. Just honest conversations, new therapies, breakthrough treatments, and real solutions for real people. Mental health is not a weakness. It's a treatable medical condition, and help is available. Join the conversation now by calling the studio at 888-994-4995, Studio A. This is Dr. Mensch, where hope and healing begin.
Good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch. I'm a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist in Boca Raton, where I practice. I have a clinical practice in psychiatry at 7100 West Camino Real, Suite 404 in Boca Raton, Florida. My phone number 561-300-4052. Today, I wanted to perhaps talk a little bit about the interplay with mental health, psychiatry, and sports. And given that we're now in the middle of January and NFL playoffs have started, and on Monday is the Super Bowl of college football, the college football playoffs finals, and then in terms of the other major sports leagues in the U.S., we're about midway through the hockey and basketball season, and hockey is soon going to, after the Super Bowl, is going to take kind of center stage when they're going to be in the Olympics, and you're going to have professional hockey players playing for their respective countries in the Olympic Games. So these next couple months are pretty big in sports, and mental health has a kind of a significant role in sports. Just like you have sports medicine doctors, like you always hear about athletes having ACL tears, rotator cuff injuries, Tommy John surgeries that are, the surgeons who perform these operations, Frank Jobe and Neil Elatroche and all these famous sports medicine docs, they've done training and fellowships in sports medicine. Well, we have, psychiatrists and psychologists who, focus on sports, and a lot of professional teams, whether again in football, baseball, basketball, hockey, have hired or employed or consulted, various mental health professionals to help, their players deal with, stress of everyday life and also the pressures that come about being a professional athlete. I remember, I'm going to say this is going back probably into the late 80s or early 90s, but there was a second baseman for the LA Dodgers named Steve Sachs. He was not a Hall of Fame player, but solid professional baseball player, solid second baseman. But I remember there was a time where all of a sudden he just had like this mental block where a ball would come to him and he just couldn't throw the ball 30 feet to Mike Marshall, who was the first baseman for the Dodgers at the time. He'd throw the ball over his head, and then the same kind of Steve Sachs disease affected a Yankee player in the mid to late 90s named Chuck Knobloch. I remember the Yankee teams in the late 90s that won 3 straight World Series. Knobloch, kind of developed what's called Steve Sachs disease, where he just couldn't throw the ball 30, 40 feet from second base, not even second base, from the hole between second and first to Tino Martinez. And so baseball players and other professional athletes, are affected by mental health issues no differently than the average Joe. And can give other examples. This is aging me. Ricky Williams, the former running back for the Miami Dolphins, who before that was with the New Orleans Saints. But I remember when he would hold press conference or interviews, he would always wear a helmet. He suffered from social anxiety disorder. Zach Greinke, a solid career major league pitcher with Arizona, the Dodgers, Kansas City Royals. It was pretty well known he suffered from social anxiety disorder. Kevin Love has been pretty open about his battles with panic disorder. He's a former star player for the Minnesota Timberwolves, Cleveland Cavaliers, and more recently we played with local, our hometown Miami Heat. So, professional athletes are human and suffer from the same mental health issues that everyday Joe Schmo, or Joe Q Public suffers from. But professional athletes are under more scrutiny. They're under the microscope. They're getting paid tens of millions of dollars. Just look at some of these athletes. I'm a diehard New York Mets fan. So yesterday, the Mets offered a short-term contract to Kyle Tucker, who's a highly sought-after free agent outfielder. They're offering him, they didn't specify how many years, but $50 million a year salary. Or last year, the Mets signed Juan Soto, premier outfielder, to a 15-year, $760 million contract. Man, this guy is set for the rest of his life. But imagine the scrutiny and the pressure that puts you under. He's 27 years old. He's like peaking at the prime of his career. He has his whole life ahead, and he's been thrown, I think with this contract with some incentives, it could be close to like $820 million. So he's been thrown $800 million. And it's like, dude, you got to hit 300, hit 40 homers, and drive in 100 RBIs every year. You got to live up to your contract. So, how do you expect some, 25-year-old or even some of these college players now that have these getting paid, what's called NIL, name, image, and likeness, where 19, 20-year-old kids are being, given millions of dollars, and they're in all on, primetime TV and have to perform. And then if, let's say, they don't perform up to, standards or what is expectations. Think of, all the vitriol that is hurled at them through social media and television media. So it's not surprising that even the top sports athletes in all the major U.S. sports and even some of the other, I'll call them minor sports, have their own mental health issues. And teams, like I said, are utilizing mental health professionals to either counsel their, their athletes or their players, or to help the team kind of, I don't want to say like in some sort of preventative or prophylactic manner, but kind of, guide them, teach them skills. I, for a while, was a certified clinician with Major League Baseball to assess both Major League and minor league players for what's called a therapeutic use exemption. So this was a special kind of track where Major League and minor league players who had attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that for them to continue being prescribed like stimulant medications, which are controlled substances for their ADHD, they had to go through a track called a TUE, or therapeutic use exemption, where they would have to meet with a psychiatrist like myself, who was certified by Major League Baseball, to do a thorough evaluation and determine that, and if it was determined that the player needed to continue with their stimulant like Adderall or Vyvanse, that it would be allowed, because under the standard collective bargaining agreement, if a player tested positive for an amphetamine, they would be suspended. But if they had this therapeutic exemption, it would be allowed. But in meeting, some players, not only that they have ADHD, some of them had, bona fide anxiety disorders, some had depression, and a lot of it had to do with kind of the pressure that has been put on them, whether again by themselves, their family, or just expectations of being some supreme athlete and having to make it to the big show in case of baseball. And again, even the athletes that I met that were in the minor leagues who haven't made it yet to the big league club, still these are elite athletes. I take even the 12th, the guy, last player on the bench in an NBA team, or the player on an NHL team that only gets like 2 minutes of ice time a game, bench warmers, or a utility player on a baseball team that maybe gets 50 at bats a year if he's lucky. These are elite athletes. They made it to the ultimate place, made it to the professional league of their respective sport. So even say with tennis, the 100th ranked male or female tennis player, maybe they haven't won the US Open or any Grand Slam tournaments or any major tennis tournaments, and haven't made $10 million or $20 million a year that maybe Novak Djokovic or Carlos Alcaraz, or I don't know, some of the, what's her name from Coco Gauff make. But still, you're ranked 100th or 150th tennis player in the world. You are elite. Okay, you may not be Coco Gauff, but still, you're like the top 1-2%. So you're up there, and the pressures placed on these athletes, the grind of a long season, and it's not like that once the season's over, you're done. I know, after baseball season ends or the basketball season ends, and let's say the team that a player's on didn't make the postseason, they have 3-4 months, 5 months off, but they'll take a vacation with their friends or family. But once that's over with, they got to keep training, staying in shape. They got to kind of live up to the expectations of, hey, I'm the star player on this team, or I'm the number one recruit on that team, or I'm the prize free agent signing. And then think about the players on teams who go deep in the postseason. So here, let's take baseball. This past season, the Dodgers and Toronto Blue Jays made it to the World Series, and Game 7 concluded, I believe, on November 1st. Well, spring training starts in about a month. Pitchers and catchers for many of the teams report around Valentine's Day. It's exactly a month away. So if you were Shohei Ohtani, or Blake Snell, or Freddie Freeman, or Vladimir Guerrero on the Toronto Blue Jays, you basically had 3 months off after playing baseball from mid-February to early November. So you were basically, away from your family, away from your children, and just focusing on baseball from middle of February to early November. It's a lot of pressure. And again, even the stars, big stars, are human, and they experience breakdowns. And even the greatest athletes, you use the word choke. What is, it's when, something gets in your head, gets in your mind, and kind of, gets in the way from executing. And there's a lot of, sports is physical, but it's also very much mental. Baseball players, hockey players, well, I would say baseball players go into these prolonged slumps where, a player might go 0 for 20, or have 5 or 6 straight games where they couldn't pitch out of the third or fourth inning. I mean, a lot of it is mental. Back in the early 70s, there was a baseball player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's a pitcher named Steve Blass. He was the highlight of his career was a 1971 World Series that Pittsburgh beat Baltimore. he was a star pitcher, but I believe like the following year he just completely fell apart where he couldn't get the ball over the plate, and I think he was out of baseball. After another year, he just never regained his like all-star kind of Cy Young like winning form. A lot of it was all mental. There was nothing wrong with his mechanics. I mean, it's not like he just forgot like how to throw a baseball or throw a splitter or a fastball. It's a lot of it was all mental, where he just kind of once he got into that inability to throw a strike, it kind of stuck with him. I'm going to take a brief commercial break and continue talking about this interesting topic when we return.
What happens when the mind of a healer crosses over into the darkness of the human soul? From authors David Icovetti, Dr. Gil Lichtshein, and Yolanda DeLuca comes a chilling psychological thriller, Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil. This gripping novel follows a respected Boca Raton psychiatrist who secretly descends into madness, transforming into a modern-day king of the underworld. Inspired by true events and Dr. Gil's childhood connection to a mob family, this story blurs the line between sanity and evil, genius and destruction. Unforgettable, disturbing, impossible to put down. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil, a 2020 psychological crime thriller. You're listening to Dr. Mensch with child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtshein. For a copy of his powerful new book, Dr. Mensch's Prescription for Evil, visit Amazon.com. For more information or to schedule a consultation, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
This is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch. I'm back, continuing to talk about the interplay or overlay of mental health / psychiatry and professional sports. And I would also probably say social media. I don't want to say thank social media or blame social media, but I think social media has also playing a big role in kind of putting professional athletes, under scrutiny. They're professional athletes, people view them as some sort of standard bearers or people you look up to, but at the same time, they're very human. But professional athletes now, because of social media, are never out of the public eye, even in the off season. And so again, I think that contributes, somewhat to the pressures and expectations that, society places on athletes. Another example, star basketball player for the Memphis Grizzlies, Ja Morant. He was I don't know if he wasn't the first pick, but he was a top 5 pick, I believe, in 2018. Came from a small school, I think, called Murray State. I think they're in Kentucky. Came from a good, solid family background, but in the last couple of years, his career is kind of somewhat unraveled. I mean, I'm not aware that he, prior to that, wasn't aware that he ever got in the news about having problems like with domestic violence or drugs or this or that you see a lot of athletes get into trouble for. But his kind of, shtick was he likes guns. So he'd post on his Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media platform he's using of him in his car or with other friends, like with his guns. And that's kind of like a no-no, just because everybody sees it. And then when the commissioner of basketball saw it, he kind of got pissed and was like, dude, what are you doing? And his team suspended him, and part of his suspension from the NBA was he had to get, therapy and counseling. Again, probably indicating that Ja was obviously dealing with some sort of mental health issues, not sure what. Again, I don't know him personally, and I don't know the details, but here's a young man in his early to mid-20s making tens of millions of dollars a year, seemingly having everything in his life, like all the money in the world, probably living in a nice home, probably driving some kick-butt car, but yet he's troubled, posting on social media, pointing guns, and when it's like, okay, you're supposed to serve as a role model for young, especially African American kids, and instead you're portraying yourself like you're a thug. Clearly, he was dealing with some, underlying mental health issues. And then you hear a lot, especially in football, about let's say there was a Stephon Diggs a couple of weeks ago accused of assaulting or choking a woman. You hear about other football players, domestic violence, other football players over the years who have committed suicide from chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I mean, football, with all the physicality associated with the sport and the toll it takes on your body, and especially on your head, that's probably the one sport where there's probably the greatest need for mental health intervention compared to, let's say, basketball or baseball, which are less violent sports than football. And it's not a coincidence where, I can't think of the last time I heard of a baseball player committing suicide, or a basketball player committing suicide from repeated concussions or from brain trauma. I'm not saying that's never happened, but you just don't hear it in the media about some retired baseball player killing himself. But it's been far too many instances with retired football players. Football is a very violent sport. Concussions are it's kind of like a commonplace, and so over time, it really takes a toll on you mentally. And again, just think of also, back in November, I'm trying to remember the name of the Dallas Cowboys player who, I don't remember his name, and I don't remember that he's ever had any, controversies or major issues like run-ins with the law, but it was in between games, like during the week between games, which are on Sundays, he apparently was involved in a high-speed chase with police, and then pulled his car over and then shot himself and killed himself. That's it, Marshawn Nealand. Again, you got to wonder, why would a seemingly, we lost signal. Why a seemingly, I think he's in his early to mid 20s, professional athlete who's on top of the world, making all this money. Living the dream, living the American dream. You're a 25-year-old young man. Doesn't matter, black, white, green. You're playing at football for the Dallas Cowboys, America's team. You're like a supreme athlete. You're like in the elite top 1% of football players in the world. You're making, $10 million a year. You can provide for, I don't know if he was born in the inner city, but you could provide for your family. Probably your kids and grandkids could be taken care of for the rest of their lives, and you wind up committing suicide. Clearly, this individual was troubled, and then after his death, it was revealed that when he was in college, that there were some warning signs where he had talked about suicide. So, professional, again, brings out the point that, professional athletes are not supermen, they're not robots, they're not androids, they're human, and they have breaking points no differently than any individual. And professional athletes are, I don't want to call mental illness flawed, but they're vulnerable no differently than any person, and they have their own, issues, and may have their own mental health baggage they bring. that the pressures of being a professional athlete only magnifies. And so I think some of the major sports have taken mental health more seriously, have put mental health treatment as part of their collective bargaining agreements between owners and players, allowing players to seek out mental health treatment or even take time away, personal time from the team to deal with some mental health issues, and that these professional leagues, associations, and teams are kind of more aware of the toll that mental health can take on an athlete's career and their ability to perform at an elite level. And the other thing too is making sure that when these professional athletes get injured, like torn ACL, Achilles, rotator cuff, Tommy John surgery, that make sure that they also get the adequate mental health treatment they have, because now all of a sudden your career is just coming to a sudden stop where 1 minute you're passing the ball, rushing, pitching, hitting, and then the next minute you're done. And it's kind of like sudden, jolt to your system can be quite traumatizing, especially to, imagine you're a 21, 22, or 23-year-old kid, and you've been pampered, you're a star, and all of a sudden you're making $30 million a year, you tear your Achilles, you tear your ACL, and all of a sudden, 1 minute you're scoring 40 points a game, and the next minute you're in the operating room, and then you're doing physical therapy, and you're out for a year. So that also can take a toll on you mentally. So again, the role of mental health in sports really is just as important as the role of an orthopedic surgeon or a neurologist. And I don't want to underemphasize like how important that is. And so again, being in the month of January, we're the month of NFL playoffs and the college football championship, I thought it would be appropriate to talk a little bit about the role of mental health in sports. This is Dr. Gil Lichtshein, aka Dr. Mensch. I want to appreciate you all listening to my show, and I wish everybody a good rest of the week. And until next time, go Canes.
Thank you for joining us for Dr. Mensch with Dr. Gil Lichtshein, helping you navigate the world of mental health with clarity and care. If you or someone you love needs support, you're not alone. Treatment works and recovery is possible. To schedule a consultation or discuss non-medication therapies, personalized treatment plans, or psychiatric care, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. You can catch us each week on South Florida Oldies Radio and streaming across all social platforms. Until next time.